This black and white medium project that we are going to create is going to have the use of grid drawing, meaning we are going to take your photo references, apply a graph to them or a grid, and your drawing paper, apply a grid to that, and you are going to transfer the information from your photo reference to your drawing paper using the grid. Now, some of you may have used this method of drawing before, so this is a review for you. And others, this may be something new. So I have loaded up into Canvas this packet. This is a packet I purchased online for class use. And on the first page of the PDF file, or if you have a printer and you printed it out, you will see some information. And this is just some helpful hints, which is basically what I'm going to demonstrate to you. So it is up to you which image in the packet you choose. You can choose any one, and if you've printed it out, you can easily just print out the image that interests you, or you can print out the entire packet. That is up to you. If you are coming from the previous video in which you could not print out the packet and you had to make your own grid paper, then you are again going to look on the screen to choose an image. And I believe I already mentioned that when you look at the PDF file, the even number pages starting with page 2, which is this one, are the drawing, and the odd number pages opposite of them or below them in the PDF would be the grid that goes with that drawing. For those of you who are printing it out, if you printed it out back to front like I have here, then they are opposite each other. If you printed it out in single pages, then again, this page, the even page, would be paired up with the odd page behind it. So I'm just going to demonstrate with the first one, and as you can see, I've already demonstrated some with my other students. And you can, if you print out this packet and happen to staple it together, you can tear it apart. It's not going to hurt. But what you want is to definitely have a clear view of the boxes you are looking to for reference and your graph. So if you are working with the paper that you made this yourself, then number one, we want to check the orientation. So I need an A through K here. So if I were using this, I would finish off my alphabet at the top, and I'm going to get rid of the little marks I had from demonstrating to you this process in that first video. And I need 1 through 8. So I need one more number down the side here. So I'm going to demonstrate first for those of you who printed out. And it's the same process whether you printed out or created your own graph paper. It's just I want to reiterate that you don't have this markings to the outside border. You have your markings within boxes that will be drawn. So when we work with a graph, we're going to use the boxes themselves as reference points. So that means we're going to look at the corners. We're going to look along the lines that make the outside of the box. And then as we start drawing certain shapes, they will help us and provide information to be able to draw other shapes. So as you can see here, I already have H4 drawn, so I've X'd it out. I have D2 drawn, and I have J6 drawn. So I'm on box E3. So when going through this, I'm going to come to E down to 3. And what I'm looking at is first my corners. Since they're usually the easiest ones to judge shapes and distances with, I'm looking to see if there's anything in, around, near, or touching my corners that would help me with this drawing. So looking at it, I do have a large black shape in the corner, in the bottom right corner of E3. And if I look closely, I even see that the very corner is actually left white. So I want to make sure I'm in the right box, E3. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to try to mimic that small little angle of white that's inside that box. So it's really small. I'll try zooming in. There we go. See if we can focus a little more. My next step is to, and I'm going to try to get E3 just squeezed in there to the left, is I'm now going to use the side and that corner to judge how far up along this edge that black shape that I'm drawing in E3 starts, and how far over along my bottom edge does it come. Now, to help me here though, I'm going to skip to this corner, and let me nudge it over a little bit so you can see this, because if you notice there's another black line and shape here that come into this corner. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of an indication of that line, of where it kind of touches near that corner. And the reason why I'm doing that is so that when I judge the distance for this shape in the lower right corner, I'm not confusing the white space as going clear to that corner. And that is important to think about, is that sometimes that little tiny bit of black space that's taking up this corner gets ignored, and you think, oh, this line comes directly over to this corner, when actually it stops before that corner. So I've given myself a little bit of an indication of where that is, a slight idea of what the angle is. So now when I come in here and I start judging distance from the corner up along this line for the height of this black shape, and the distance for where it comes over and stops near this corner, it's going to give me maybe a little bit more of an accurate idea of what this shape actually looks like. So I'm just going to sketch it in. And if you notice any of the drawings around here that I have done already, I haven't colored anything in. I normally don't color anything in these graph exercises until I have completed the drawing. That way, if I do make a mistake, it's easier to erase. There's not a lot of pencil on the paper yet. Plus, it's good practice, because when it comes to your final drawing and composition, you will only do an outline of it first, and no shading with any of the black and white medium will occur until the graph is gone. So get in the mindset, into the habit of when you draw with the graph, to just draw the outline of your shapes without adding any shading to them, or in this case, without coloring in the solid black areas. So now that I am fairly confident I like where that line is, I'm now going to use it and my corner and my lines to help me get this next shape in. So I'm going to judge negative space, or the white space, between this top of the black shape I just drew and where this next shape may start along this line. And since I already have in this corner an idea of where it's starting, I'm going to now pay attention to that white space between these two and try to mimic it as best as I can as I draw this line upwards. Now this has some thickness to it, So again, I'm now judging from this line I just drew the thickness of the rest of this black line and any directions it may go, and then it splits. So I may want to give myself an indication first of where the thickness is for this black line, and kind of give myself an idea of how far it might be coming in, and start sketching out that little white negative space. And that will help me then, when it comes to the split, to know where I'm going with it and getting it sketched in. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I think it looks fairly close to what's in the graph. And I'm going to mark E3 as done. So that means now I go on to the next box, and for this mystery grid drawing, it's important that you follow in order the boxes on the paper, because not every box is represented that's in the graph, and that is because in this packet all they have done is taken the boxes that have actual shapes in them and included them in your puzzle pieces here. So A1 may not have anything drawn into it, so you'll just waste a lot of time if you start looking through here and like, oh, where's A1? A1 has to have something here, when in actuality it might not. So when I go on, my next box is I7, so I come over to here to row I. I'm going to come down here to box 7, and looking at I7, all that's here is a little black shape in this upper corner. So again, how far down from the corner does it come? How far over from the corner does it come? And I'm just going to try to, as best as I can, sketch that in there. Now realize when you are working with a graph, and this is also another reason why you don't want to color things in yet, is that sometimes, especially puzzle pieces like this where they've cut it apart, reassembled it in a random order on the graph, on the reference page, is that sometimes little bits of information could get lost. So by just drawing the outlines, it's going to be easier for me to match information up from box to box than it is if it's colored in already. So I know that J7 is most likely going to have something drawn into it because I have a line here in I7 that ends at this side, and I have some shapes up here in J6 that also end at this outside border of this box. So I'm guessing that somehow these may connect together. So that means that when I look at J7, wherever it is in my puzzle, and I'm not going to search it out right now, but when I finally do come to J7, I'm going to pay attention to where these shapes on these boxes end and begin, and see if these are something that are going to connect, and then that's going to help me draw anything in J7 that may be there that may connect to these two already done boxes. So that is the process. You're just going to continue to go through piece by piece of whatever mystery grid you've chosen, and you're going to find the boxes. So I7 is done. A6 is my next one, so I'm going to come to row A, down to number 6, and I'm going to draw in this shape. Once again, I'm going to use my corner, and I'm going to look at my white space and get an indication of where my black shape is going to start. Now, this is one, might as well talk about it because it's one we haven't come across yet, and that is when you have a shape that kind of just floats in the middle of the box. Whereas the ones we looked at already, the two I demonstrated with, they went from edge to edge of the box. Now suddenly we have a shape that touches the edge of the box and just kind of floats in the middle of it. So this is what I usually do. I will kind of give myself an idea of how much white space over will that shape possibly come? How far down from the top of this box down in white space will that shape possibly come in? And then also, of course, my lines on the sides and my corners will help me then get the rest of this. So I have an idea of where this black line starts on my corner. There's a little thickness to it. There's a white shape that's going to come in here, and again it kind of floats in the middle. And when I kind of look at my little grid, it's about a quarter of the way through here. So if I kind of give myself an indication of where a quarter of the way in the box is, that white mark comes about a quarter of the way over. And then the thickness of the black down below it. Double check it with what I have to my corner in white space. And if I feel that looks pretty good, and I know this is going to swoop up some, and since I've already kind of given myself an idea of where this may be going from this edge over into the floating space, then I can start sketching something out. Give it a rough outline, look at it. I think I got it a little bit too fat, so I'm going to come in, narrow it down just a little bit more, clean it up. Until I'm happy with the shape. And once I'm happy with the shape, then I'm going to X off that box. It's still a little bit thick, still needs a little bit of adjustment, but X out that box, go on to the next. Okay, so that's how I usually judge when a shape is kind of floating in space there. I like to give myself an idea of how far from other edges, how much white space is showing here, how much white space is here, how much white space is here, to give myself an idea of where that shape is kind of floating at, and then sketch it in. So if you have any further questions on this, you are free to contact me. I'm going to demonstrate a couple of boxes here on the homemade graph, just to make sure that those of you who had to make your graph have a better understanding of how to work with it. And those of you with the packet, you may go ahead and get to work on that. So those of you with the homemade graph paper, again, these boxes will be drawn in. We just had to put our grid in here so we know where we're at while in the drawing process. So H4 is going to be over here. So here's row H, come down 4 boxes, there's H4. D2, this is row D, come down 2, there's D2. J6, here's row J, come down 6 boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is down here. I7, come to row 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to demonstrate with what I just finished off with those who have the packet printed out, and that is A6. So here's row A. I'm coming right down row A to 6, and this is where A6 would be drawn in. So once again, just like what I was talking with them about, I'm going to again use my corners and my lines to kind of give myself an idea of where things start. Once again, I'm trying to judge that quarter distance for that white shape. Get that sketched in. And the thickness of the black shape below it. And once again, this is one that's floating in the middle of space. So I'm going to judge how far over from this line, how far down from this line, possibly how far up from the bottom line, this shape is occurring. And once I kind of give myself an idea of where it's at, I'm going to again sketch in my shape. And if I'm happy with it, I'm ready to move on to my next one. And if not, then I need to go back and make corrections. So I don't think that's too bad of a shape. I'm going to call A6 done. So that means my next one is H6. So I'm going to come over here to row H, down to row 6. And this is where H6 is going to be sketched in. So once again, I'm going to use my corners. I'm going to use my sides. And I'm going to use those white shapes and black shapes to give myself an idea of how to redraw all these shapes that are in here and their positions. So if you have any questions, just like I mentioned with those who have printed out the packet, please make sure you contact me. But this was no different than those who have the packet printed out, and that all you have to do is put in a little tiny bit extra more work to draw out the grid first. But this way you don't need any printer. Instead of looking at this on paper, you're going to have this on your screen to look at those shapes as you work, and you won't need a printer at all for this assignment. So once again, any questions, please reach out. Otherwise, that is your assignment. Working with a grid using the mystery grid packet, choosing which of those drawings you complete and which format, printed or homemade grid paper, are you using. Submit photos of your work when finished. You need both the image reference. So for those of you working on the computer, you're going to want to take a screenshot of this and submit it with a photograph of your finished drawing. Those of you working with the packet, you're going to want a photo of both the drawing and the graph reference you use. Take two separate photos so they can be seen clearly, and you will submit those to your assignment.